Let's go.
Just everybody in the building. I just love the bond we have, and it just feel like family here.
Arkansas fans, Omega Blake, you guys have talked me into him being a big-time SEC receiver, and I'm already ready to make one bold proclamation at the end of this video. In one key category, I think he will lead the SEC in next year. So shout out to Trey Biddy. I have like one very hilarious photo from practice that I want to share a little bit later, but let's get to the tape. So, to me, I think out of any rep that I watched Omega Blake have last year, it was this one that really stood out to me the most. So, Arkansas loses their leading target getter in Andrew Armstrong, and a lot of you know Taylen Green's favorite throw were these sideline balls to Armstrong, sometimes on pure goes, sometimes on back shoulders such as this. So you really need to be a Nick Walinda. It's a high wire act to make these types of catches, and you see Blake gets not 1 but 2 feet in bounds. So this was one of his biggest catches on the season. It's 0-0, Charlotte 2-3, ECU 3-2. Obviously, Charlotte ended up winning this game in a blowout, but on a coverage bust, he makes a really good catch for a first down. But that was just a zone bust. A lot of receivers are making that play. It was critical, though, to extend the downs and pick up a touchdown later on the drive. Here, he is in man coverage, and he is pinned towards the sideline. Now, in a perfect world, you would like to have a little bit more room as a receiver to operate, but he is as good as anyone you'll see at just keeping his body still, not getting wild and out of control, and finding a way to get that foot in bounds. Almost got a second in there as well. Another thing I like about Blake to match well with a guy like Taylen Green is on scramble drills. He does a really good job getting creative. So obviously, this was from a few years ago. Blake started his career at South Carolina, spent a few years there, and then last year he was with the Charlotte 49ers. And you see on the scramble drill, he's able to get open versus what was a very good Missouri secondary. And not only was he able to get open, he's got some juice after the catch to pick up a few extra yards. Okay, so let's break this play down. It's actually one that was famously run to the ground by the Brady Patriots. You're looking at an all-22 version of the play. It's called Hoss Juke. You're running comeback routes from your outside receivers, goes from your slots, and your innermost slot is running a juke route over the middle. And this is Omega Blake versus a linebacker. So basically how this juke route is normally run, it's an option route where Blake can either cut to the outside, but more often than not, the receiver is cutting to the inside, even if they are at a leveraged disadvantage. And the reason why you do that is the design of this, and this is how LSU actually runs Hoss Juke. You start off looking to the left to pull this safety over to the left, which more so opens this one-on-one versus a linebacker over the middle. So you can see the quarterback here, this was their backup, starts off looking to the left, and then instead of working to the middle, once again, I'm not, privy to how it's actually taught, you can see Blake is open right here for a touchdown, and the pocket is good. So watch what Omega Blake decides to do. He keeps running to find an open space, and the quarterback is still able to find him eventually for a nice touchdown. Blake has really good feel for the game. So let's get to another rep in the slot right here. Isaiah Satania mostly played the slot. I think he had 80% of his snaps played in the slot per PFF. So Isaiah Blake could very well be a slot-ish wide receiver for Arkansas. It's 4th and 7. There's a heavy blitz called, a really well-disguised blitz from the nickel over here. And guess what? Charlotte does a really good job picking everything up. And even if it wasn't picked up, a slot fade is a relatively quick, deep ball thrown versus pressure, okay? And you can see Omega Blake is really good at just turning on the freaking jets, right? The speed is clearly there. Now, once again, SEC slots, they're going to be a little bit faster, All right, but Blake catches it, is able to stay in bounds and score this at the same time. Now, once again, you always want to be careful when you're reaching the football over the goal line in a spot like this. But once again, he's got really strong hands to be able to hold this in and score. And then we get to this 3rd and 8, once again, in the slot. And having him in the slot gets him on safeties and huge speed mismatches. And obviously their quarterback, who we will talk about here in just a moment, he was with the Florida Gators for like 2 seconds, is able to throw an absolute beast. But look at how much space. Look at how easily he ran by these guys. That is really special stuff on the 3rd and 8, down 14. Blake in the slot again. So you have a motion here with the tight end. This gets Blake on a thicker linebacker type of player. Now he gets off of him. Nice zone coverage, a little fake pitch to the right, a Lane Kiffin staple into the field. And guess what? You're throwing a deep over, and it is cut off, but Blake was open for a second. This pass protection is what really won this rep. But take a look at this catch right here from Blake. Yes, he is open, but he takes the contact and brings it on in. Out of all of my favorite things about Blake, notice how many conversions were on 3rd and long. We're on the road at Georgia. Omega Blake, we need someone to step up and make a play, and what was almost an upset bid, right? Omega Blake, once again, we have him here in the slot, man-to-man here versus his overhang at a leverage disadvantage. So you could see that this DB has leverage on him, and he's trying to run an in-breaking route. So you really have got to sell that you're doing something else and just beat this guy to the spot. You get good protection here, and guess what? Blake is able to do that very thing. Rattler trusts him in the spot, and guess what? He makes a huge throw right here for a 1st down. Here he is back on the outside, press man versus Everett, who I believe is in the league now. Ooh, nasty stuff. A little juke to the inside here, and you'll see that Everett is on skates. Now, it was a slippery, rainy day, but he needed to win quickly while Rattler was getting pulverized behind that bad South Carolina offensive line. And here's a 3rd and Magnolia, a 3rd and Prescott, a 3rd and... I'm trying to think of another small Arkansas town. Which one should I use in the next video? But it is 3rd and 15, okay? Holy crap. This is really good stuff. So, once again, give this South Carolina offensive line some credit. Still, this does not look like a winning proposition. But Omega Blake is running a dagger concept, all right? First off, this is really, really, really tight quarters. You need this vertical to clear out, and we need you to cut right behind it, and that is exactly what he does. And look at Spencer Rattler throwing this ball with some good anticipation. You get a little lucky that this linebacker did start running hard at this check down right here. And look at when Rattler is deciding to rip this. So he's trusting Omega Blake while Rattler is getting hit to make this play, and he makes it. And one of my favorite things about Blake is, yes, a minute ago, you saw him make a catch on a slant and fall down. This time, he catches it in stride and is able to pick up all this extra yak, baby. You freaking love to see it, Omega. All right, so this rep right here fascinates me, and it's easy to look over it because it is indeed the Furman Paladins. And if you can, guess what state Furman is in. They're playing South Carolina, and take a look at this. 7 seconds left to go. So basically, you have 0 timeouts, and you want to throw a ball that's either a touchdown or an incompletion so you can still go out there, kick a field goal, and make it a 2-possession game. Now, once again, this is from a few years ago, but you've seen Blake basically do quite a few different things. Take a look at what Spencer Rattler decides to do. At the top of the screen, it is Xavier Leggett, who basically was a first-round pick and talks like he is from Maumelle. I'm kidding.
Well, y'all probably seen that video when I tell them folks I eat coon, I eat raccoon.
Let's go with Hampton. He talks like he's from Hampton. Shout out South Arkansas. And I love it, by the way. It's not a put down at all. He's absolutely hilarious. But the truth is, if I am Spencer Rattler in this spot, I am throwing to Xavier Leggett over Omega Blake. But no, Rattler says, hey, I like Omega Blake's talent. He decides to go there. And by the way, this is a longer throw. So in theory, this would take a little bit longer than to actually throw a jump ball over here. So part of this also is the coverage, right? It's easier to throw a jump ball versus press. So that was probably why he decided to go here. In theory, this corner probably should be playing with his heels there, knowing the time and situation, and they don't have any timeouts. Still, he makes a decision to go to the non-first-round pick, Omega Blake, in this jump ball spot. And what does Blake do? Well, he does what Andrew Armstrong does in this spot. Moss this dude, and it wasn't quite a moss, but just absolutely positively annihilates this matchup. Is Omega Blake the clear alpha? Why in the world did Trey Biddy have his laptop in a freaking refrigerator? That is one of the craziest things. I get it when you get a fancy camera. Your computer can very well overheat. But shout out to Trey. This footage actually is from my buddy Kyle at HawgBeat, now with On3 Rivals, all that good stuff. And there you go. Now, Arkansas live streams, they are back every Monday at 5 p.m. Central. We want you to tune in. We'll have guests, all that good stuff. I'm so excited that Razorback football is back. Now, I pride myself on being objective about this team. If you're new here, I'm not an Arkansas fan, but I want Sam to do well outside of when they play my team, and most of you already know who my team is. But I want to start with the single most interesting thing about Omega Blake is that his production did double at Charlotte, right? His yards went up, yards per catch. Obviously, catches went up. But what's very interesting, and this blew my mind, is that he actually played fewer snaps at Charlotte. In fact, it was roughly like 75 to 100 snaps fewer than he did at South Carolina. It was kind of a weird room. You see him making a catch alongside Raylen Sharpe. I almost called him Isaiah Satania because, you see the resemblance, right? But that is so interesting. It makes me wonder, why did Charlotte not play him more? Well, it was a slow ramp up. Obviously, they didn't really even know what they had in him. So there is two sides to that, right? To be, even though lesser competition, that much more productive in a shorter amount of time, that shows you he was relatively efficient, right, in a somewhat log-jammed room. So that was Monty Harrison and Cam Shanks. 17, Jalen Brown. I'm very familiar with him, starting his career at LSU and then at Florida State. I would be very cautious in your optimism of him next year. Andy Jean, also a transfer coming in from Pitt. But that's the weirdest thing about this wide receiver room, is that it's all transfers, right? Like, it's insane. I don't think I can remember a wide receiver room ripped down to the studs quite like this one, basically. And then everybody coming in is basically just transfers, right? It's not too uncommon, especially at wide receiver where skill position guys do transfer at a higher rate. But it is something. The snap thing is interesting, right? If Arkansas decides to run with very heavy personnel, which basically means 2 tight end sets, you could see wide receiver just usage way down. But this stat, once again, is crazy. Arkansas had 4 different wide receivers last year run more snaps than Omega Blake did last year at Charlotte. So 2 things to be excited about with that. Number one, for him to be that productive with, that few snaps, it really is something. Obviously, that yard per catch stat that we showed you earlier, that number would be down if he had to play more snaps at Charlotte. That's just simple logic. But the second part of that is, can he handle a heavier workload? So let's just say you're watching this right now and you do believe Omega Blake can be Andrew Armstrong level good as a transfer. I do think he can be pretty good. I don't think he's going to be that good. But let's just say that he is. Can he handle a 689 snap load that Andrew Armstrong had? And that was in 11 games. So I don't know. That's a question of durability. I do think, once again, I've not watched all of these receivers really closely. I do think Blake will be the leading receiver. Now, this is where it gets interesting, is a lot of you know Taylen Green is not the best thrower, but Andrew Armstrong did lead the SEC in targets by a wide margin, by 15 targets. And once again, that was him only playing 11 games. Taylen Green does lock on one guy, right? A lot of mobile quarterbacks are first-read quarterbacks, whether they're throwing to their top guy or not. If they're not, they're tucking and running, right, or extending a play or whatever. So, it is fascinating that, let's just say Omega Blake is that. He could lead the SEC in targets. It is not out of the realm of possibilities. But, in speaking to a few Arkansas beat guys that I've gotten to know over the years and just some people at the program, it is interesting that they still think that this wide receiver room is wide the frick open. Now, this is my guy. You guys know Quincy Rhodes. I mean, look at him. Goodness gracious, he really came on. That Tennessee game was big. But, for me, it is very fascinating. I really liked Blake a little bit more. And I remember earlier this offseason in the spring where I said, man, I am really, really, really worried about that Arkansas wide receiver room. Now, I'm still really worried about this room. Especially when you lose a third-round pick like Isaac Tesla, and he was fourth on the team in snaps. I know it's a sore subject for a lot of Arkansas fans. So, for me, I enjoyed Omega Blake. I'm very interested to see what he's going to do next year. So comment below, who will lead Arkansas in targets next season? And all of this means absolutely nothing if Taylen Green does not take a step forward. It is Power Hour SEC. Boom. See you on Monday. And tonight we are doing salmon. Let's go.